Now, first of all, Wells MP James Heappey has caused controversy online by questioning the decision to try a former British soldier over the death of a Catholic man during the Troubles. 23-year-old Aidan McAnespie was fatally shot in County Tyrone at a border checkpoint in Northern Ireland 30 years ago. David Jonathan Holden, who's 48, is to be charged with manslaughter by gross negligence. But Conservative MP for Wells, James Heappey, tweeted earlier whether this was in the public interest and got, has to be said, quite a response. So he joins me now from Westminster. James, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. First of all, what's your issue with bringing this case to court now?
I think that there is a really important principle at stake here, which is that when soldiers, as I have done, go away on operations, they are required to make split-second life and death decisions based on their perception of the threat around them. And sometimes, perfectly within the rules of engagement, they use lethal force when it turns out it wasn't necessary. And on very, very rare but very tragic occasions, the wrong people are killed or injured altogether. But the fact is that those soldiers were doing what they were trained to do. They didn't necessarily do anything wrong. And in the context of the environment in which they were serving at that time, they did exactly as they should have done. What I have a problem with is exposing our troops and former soldiers to litigation, in this case, decades after the event. And I accept that this case is dissimilar to many others. But still, there is a really important principle at stake here, that those who are serving right now, those who are putting their lives on the line, have to know that when they go away on operations and take those almost impossible decisions, that those incidents will be investigated there and then, and if they are judged to have been fine, then that's the end of the matter.
It doesn't mean just because something is historical, though, that it is correct or equally isn't correct. And it is in the public interest to prosecute people who unlawfully kill other people. And that's part of the process, isn't it?
Well, I think, as I've just said, it is on the battlefield, things are different. It is actually perfectly possible to kill somebody on the battlefield because your perception of the threat that they caused at that time was such that you believed your life or the lives of others to be in danger. And so you applied lethal force only to find out after the event that it wasn't necessary. Now, in the cold light of day, 10, 20, 30 years later, it's very easy for somebody to say, well, that was an unlawful killing. But the circumstances in which that action was taken, and I'm not speaking specifically here about the case that has been made the news today. I'm speaking generally about soldiers taking those difficult decisions and the way we protect them thereafter. But we have to understand that just because in the cold light of day years later it looks bad, doesn't mean that at that very time the rules of engagement were not followed, and given the circumstance of the operating environment, the right thing was done.
We do need to talk about this case because this is the one you decided to respond to on Twitter and make a statement about, and the family will want justice. Isn't that fair?
Well, I mean, as I've said in a subsequent tweet, now, I know that there are things about this case that are atypical, but there is a reality to military service. That means that you need to take decisions in the heat of the moment. I don't know what was the perception of threat in the mind of the man that has been charged today. I don't know what had happened to him in the days immediately beforehand. I don't know what the intelligence picture was that they were briefed on before they went out. I don't know how the chain of command had trained him and all of those things. But that's exactly the point. You can't take a microscope to things that happened 30 years ago in a military combat environment and start to sort of unpick it all, because I'm certain that I have been in incidents in Iraq and Afghanistan, and in Afghanistan, probably not in Iraq, in Afghanistan, when the call was pretty tight. And I'm confident we did the right thing given the circumstances we were in at the time.
But that's not fair for you to make the same decision, is it? James, you can't play judge and jury over the same thing, can you? If you
I'm not
think,
sure I follow your line of questioning, Matt.
well, you're just saying that you had an instance where you thought it was a tight situation. It shouldn't be you that makes the decision on the situation and then the decision on the outcome.
And nor was it. I mean, the point that I've made again and again when we've been debating this issue up in Westminster over the last couple of years is that after every one of those incidents that I was involved in when I was in Iraq or Afghanistan, the RMP, the Royal Military Police, would be straight away investigating that. When I was the adjutant of a battalion in 2009 and we were up in Sangin and we were having a very, very difficult tour indeed, almost every day I, as the adjutant, was starting the process of all of the sort of after-incident reviews, shooting incident reports, the after-action reviews that are necessary after any time that a UK soldier has been involved in the use of lethal force. And that is all for the purpose of ensuring that our troops are held to the very highest standards. Now, my point on this, and the point of many of my colleagues, and that is why there is a large group of us hoping to bring forward a statute of limitations in order to ensure that troops cannot be hounded by long after the event litigation, is that once that investigation in theatre is complete, unless compelling new evidence comes forward thereafter, that must be the end of it. Otherwise, the impact that that has on the operational effectiveness of people serving now could cost them their lives.
Surely, and finally, there must be a case. Somebody must feel that there is a case if it's gone to trial, because they won't waste time on things like this. So doesn't that kind of prove that actually the process does need to be followed if the trial can be put together and if, therefore, the details of what did happen have come to light and can be proven?
Well, you tell me what new evidence has come to light in the last month, year, that wasn't known about previously?
That I don't know, I'm afraid. I don't know the details of the case. But
and that's exactly the point. What we can't do is have people dredging up events that happened decades ago. Especially, by the way, I mean, there is the point about the statute of limitations is it is going to apply to all theatres of operation. It's not just the Northern Ireland thing. But, you know, given that those who are on the other side of the conflict in Northern Ireland have long since had their sort of, been released from jail and promised that there'll be no further prosecution, how extraordinary that we're exposing people 30 years after the event. If there's new and compelling evidence that has never previously been considered, then I will delete my tweet and accept that I was wrong. But I don't know that that is the case. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not the case. And I am convinced that we are going to see current serving soldiers, sailors and airmen in the British Armed Forces getting killed because they will hesitate about doing what they must because they are worried about litigation years after. And people have to understand what an effect it is having. I had 2 rifles in Parliament yesterday, and it was clear to me when we were talking about this that current serving soldiers really care about the way that the nation is treating those who have served before them. We've got to get this right.
James, thank you very much for your time again today. That's Wells MP James Heappey.